Obviously, you don't understand my views on homosexuality. I believe that our Constitution protects everybody, regardless of their sexual orientation or any other aspect. I also believe that marriage is between one man and one woman, and that there is no reason that you can't be perfectly fair to the gay community. They shouldn't automatically assume that because you believe that marriage is between one man and one woman, that you are a homophobe.
All right, folks, welcome back to Newsmax TV's post-debate coverage. I'm joined by Rick Unger, Dick Morris, and pollster John Zogby. Now, Dick, we had some technical problems prior to our break. I want people to hear from you first and weigh in on who you think did well tonight in the CNBC Republican presidential debate and who didn't do so well.
Well, first of all, I think all of them did well. I think it was a very talented group, and I think that each of them really did well. I think that Trump failed to dominate the debate as he has the other two. And I think to a certain extent he was marginalized, partially by the way the questioning was handled. I thought that Carson did not do enough to sustain the huge lead he has in the polls. He always looks to me like he's half asleep. And I was not very impressed with him tonight, although he wasn't bad. That gay answer was a good one. I think the three that did the best were Cruz, who I think really nailed it, Huckabee, who I think did awfully well, and Christie, who I think was fabulous and really could get back into this race as a result of the performance. The line that even in New Jersey, this is considered rude, was really precious. I think Kasich came across a little bit as flailing and repetitive and I don't think he did well for himself. Rubio, I think did very well. He sounded good. He showed his charisma and his attractiveness and all of that. But I think he was hurt by two questions. I don't think he answered the attendance issue well. If there's one divide between insiders in Washington and outsiders, it is attendance. The insiders say, hey, what does it matter? He's running for president. The outsiders say, we're paying him to do a job, and he should do the job and not be running for the next one without attending and voting. I think he also got tripped up a bit on the personal finances, and I think more scrutiny of that could ultimately hurt him. I think Rand Paul did well, but I think he's rather marginalized from this debate. Fiorina, I thought, was also very effective. I thought she gave the best explanation of the need for limited government and the perils of big government. I thought that was superb. On the other hand, I think she was less convincing in rebutting the charges about her record at HP. And I think it's very hard for a candidate who was once high up and then lost the vote to regain that vote. And I think that's going to hobble both
Okay, we're having
Charlie Fiorina and Jeb Bush.
All right, let's welcome in John Zogby, of course, the great pollster. John, how are you?
I'm good, very good. Hi.
So what was your take on tonight's debate?
I'm agreeing with a lot of what Dick just said, except for maybe the winners and losers. I have Rubio and Kasich actually as the winners tonight. Rubio, I thought, faced some heat and handled it with style and good sense. I think he also came back hard on the media for rude questions. I think he comported himself well. Kasich, I thought, yeah, maybe a little hot, but I think he came out to play tonight. He's got a record. He's got a good one, both in Ohio and in Congress, and he got a chance to state it in a very credible way. Very close behind them were Ted Cruz and Carly Fiorina. Ted Cruz is the heir apparent now to Ben Carson and Donald Trump. He's the outsider working on things from the inside, and I think he staked his ground very effectively. Carly, I actually thought she handled the Hewlett-Packard charge with aplomb tonight, and I also like the fact she laughed at herself a little bit. Style-wise, the winners were Mike Huckabee and Chris Christie. Huckabee is great for those folksy metaphors, but no substance that we see in the debates. Christie, a lot of style, a lot of substance. Where's his place in all this? You're looking for an effective governor, you've got Kasich. The losers tonight, I think, were Jeb Bush and Rand Paul. Jeb Bush just not finding his way in the mix here at all, and Rand Paul, I think, just overshadowed. To voters, if you're looking for a Ron Paul libertarian, Ted Cruz, I guess, is your guy.
And Rick?
What did you think of Trump and Carson, John?
Oh, of course. You know what? The big losers tonight among the debaters, I think the media was the biggest loser, CNBC in particular. But I agree with you totally, Dick, on Trump. I think he was marginalized. He had some zingers, but that's all he's got left. And, you know, voters are getting close to making a decision. He didn't get the laugh lines because a lot of them were old. He didn't get the applause like he did. Ben Carson, I honestly, you know, that style is neat. You know, the neurosurgeon, the ultimate outsider, blah, blah, blah. But come on, the guy's making it up as he's going along, and he doesn't belong on that stage.
You know, there was an episode there about Carson that really stuck with me, and I think I'm blowing it out of proportion, but it indicates a flaw in the way Carson is approaching this, making it up as he goes along. They asked him about his proposal for a 10% flat tax.
Yes.
And then he fudged and he said, well, I was just talking about tithing. 15 is more like it. And then he said, we have a $19 trillion GDP, and 15% would be close to the $3 trillion we currently take in taxes, so it would work. Well, that's okay. But Ben, it's not GDP, it's personal income, because you're talking about taxing income. And GDP includes the budget deficit, trade deficit, and a whole lot of other stuff that's not in personal income. Personal income in the United States is about $14.5 trillion, and 15% of that is 1/3 short of where it needs to be. Now, I know that that's a technical point, and only budget wonks like me would know it. But it shows the lack of preparation on his part, that this is his main plan, his tax plan. He's going into a debate about that and about the economy. And A, he doesn't know enough to understand the difference, a very elementary point in economics. And B, he doesn't ask about it and doesn't learn about it. He just assumes he can wing it. And that's not a good way to be a neurosurgeon. It's not a good way to run for president.
Hey, Dick, if you're going to make it up as you go along, at least get it right?
Yeah.
Rick, what's your take?
You know, the thing that bothered me the most, I don't know how you guys feel about it, the only time they seemed to approach substance, and this again was the moderator's fault, was on the tax question, and yet each person only had a chance to give their top line, one-sentence talking point. I would have loved to have seen more substance about what these guys felt, and Carly Fiorina, about what they can do to make the economy run better, to get more growth than what we have so far. And yet, once again, we got none of this.
John, you said that CNBC was a big loser. How so?
Look, this was, I think, the most substantive of the debates, and it was focused, you know, on business and economic growth and the budget and so on. But yet, too much of it is devoted to the focus on the moderators and how good the zinger is. I mean, look, there is a place for this, but I think the debates should open and close on substance, and then there should be kind of a lightning round, you know, somewhere in the middle, buried in the middle, where the moderators get those zingers in. But it's not all about John Harwood, you know, and I like him. I'm not getting into that. It's not about Becky Quick. It's about the candidates, and too much of this was devoted tonight to the moderators and their zingers. I loved actually the interplay between the candidates. Especially if you've got 10, I like the sort of free-for-all. Let them go after each other.
It's too much intervention by the moderators. They're not running for president. We don't want to hear from them. If you look at that debate and you say, okay, who was the most brilliant? I think it was Cruz. Who was the most charismatic? I think it was
Oh, I'd love to know who's the most charismatic. I couldn't hear.
Who was the most entertaining? I think it was Christie. Rubio. Who was the most entertaining? Christie. Who was the most moralistic and high-minded, Huckabee. I think, though, that in the course of rattling that off, I don't think that Trump was the most anything, and I don't think Carson was. Maybe self-effacing and humble for Carson. But Trump did say something in the debate that we need to pay attention to. He said he was going to start spending lots and lots and lots of money. Anytime this guy chooses to blow everybody out of this race, he can do it by writing a check. $1 billion of television advertising. And you won't see ads for anything else for 24 hours a day other than Donald Trump. And he has the capacity to do that, and nobody else does. And if this guy decides to deploy his checkbook and really go for it and run 5 and 10-minute ads and infomercials and give detailed policy prescriptions and do negatives and do rebuttals, he can dominate this field like nobody else can.
What about that, Rick?
And he indicated tonight maybe he's going to do that.
Yeah, I frankly don't believe he will spend $1 billion in television advertising. He's getting so much free advertising that he doesn't need to. And when he begins to really slip, if he begins to really slip, and it does have that feeling right now that that could start happening, I think he's not going to want to spend the money to try and climb back up.
John?
I disagree with Dick on that. I agree with Rick. I first of all, I don't think he'll spend that kind of money, particularly if he continues on this downward slope. Secondly, we saw how far all of this free media attention has gotten him. It got him to a peak, and then he's begun his support has begun to dissipate. I don't think he can buy it back.
Let me ask you guys about Kasich. He came out from the get-go, Dick, desperate, saying the same things he said to a rally yesterday. Some guys up here want to do this, want to do that. Desperation?
Yeah, I think that he is desperate to break into the top tier. But again, you have to see this as a segmented debate. In effect, the moderate candidates are going to be either Bush or Kasich or Christie, and maybe Rubio's over there. The conservative candidates are going to be Cruz, a little bit of Rubio, Huckabee, Rand Paul, and probably Carson. And in that category, I think that Kasich has a decent shot of moving up. But I think the most important thing that happened tonight, if I were Kasich's consultant, is that Christie now is a real contender for the position he wanted to occupy.
I'm not sure I see that, but I am curious to ask you guys. You know, the very first question of the night was a question that I always thought was nonsense when you go for a job and they ask it to you. They say, what's your biggest weakness? Well, you know, my answer to that has always been, my biggest weakness is I don't like people who ask me to tell them my weaknesses. But not one of those candidates had an answer for it, and Kasich completely ignored it. Now, I understand he wants to come out firing, but don't you find it odd when you go to a whole nother place and just pretend the question was never asked?
I want to tell a funny story about that. When I was working with the Clintons, at one point I told Hillary that I thought that she should find a weakness that she could advertise and talk about and show how she's overcome that. And it was difficult, but she's done well. And I cited the example of Eleanor Roosevelt being a bad public speaker. And I said that we give people an investment in what you're doing. It would have them feel that you were flawed and fallible, and they would watch you overcome it, and it would enlist sympathy. And she said, well, I'll think about it. And then about 2 or 3 weeks later, I was meeting with her on something else, and she said, you know, Dick, I thought about that, and I tell you honestly, I can't think of anything.
Why am I not surprised? John?
I don't know of any job interview that opens up with what's your greatest weakness. And so, you know, if I were John Kasich, number one, would have done the exact same thing, which is get on my message and get on it quick. God knows with 9 other candidates up here, when are you going to get back to me again? The second thing, though, about that was that he needed to state his case forthrightly. And And also that was his form of bashing CNBC and the media the way the others did directly. His way of doing it was just simply to ignore what I really thought was, if not a stupid question, probably a stupid opening question.
Let's hear Ted Cruz again.
Go
ahead, Dick. Go ahead, Dick.
I think one important way to look at this is that it's the mission of every candidate to pivot from his biography to issue advocacy. And if you fail to do that, it's hard to succeed. Now, Obama is somebody who never needed to do that in 2008. He could stay with bio, and it carried him all the way. But if you notice, Cruz and Rubio have gotten away from bio. They mention it in passing, but it's mainly issue advocacy. And I think that Kasich is too obsessed with bio and record, and he just keeps rehearsing the the House Budget Committee, the governorship of Ohio, over and over and over again, and really does not say much else.
John, what about the comment calling or asking if Donald Trump was a comic book version of a presidential candidate?
Continuing with my theme on all of this, I just think that sort of stuff is wrong. At a time when, we know that the American people are disaffected, they're disillusioned, they're disappointed. How does this help the discourse? I just think that it was a wrong-headed question, and I think that it was handled perfectly by just simply ignoring it.
And Rick?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with John. It was a rude question. And again, I feel odd saying these things. I'm the Democrat on the panel, guys. And I thought that John Harwood in particular was incredibly rude, should never have asked anybody a question like that. Look, these are accomplished men, whether I agree with them or not. They're running for the highest office in the land, if not the world. You don't say something like that to somebody and then expect people to think that you're somehow not biased, or that you're simply moderating.
I wanted to hear one of these candidates say to that guy, hey, I'm running for president of the United States and you're not, so shut up and let me answer.
Okay. Gentlemen, I thank you. Thank you, John Zogby. Rick and Dick Morris will be back with me. We'll have more in a few minutes. Make sure you check out newsmaxpolls.com. Vote for the one you thought won the debate. We are coming right back.